Hello, my name is Donald Cruz. I'm the Adult Reference Librarian here at the Delhi branch of the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Today I'm interviewing Mr. Joe Schultheis. It's November the 9th, 2006, at about 1:45 in the afternoon. We're at the Delhi Township branch of the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Mr. Schultheis and I are the only people in the room at the moment. Mr. Schultheis is kind enough to offer to give us some of his thoughts and memories from his experience in the Second World War. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Why don't we start out by the same sort of questions that we ask most people when you decided to enlist. Obviously, I'm seeing you were born in 1924, so you were relatively young at the time the war started.
Mm-hmm.
You actually were underage in 1941. You would have been underage. You would have been younger than 18, so you couldn't enlist. So you were telling me before we started about your endeavors to enlist at a very young age. Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay, well, actually, I saw a show downtown, saw a movie downtown. It was about Pensacola, and it was kind of a recruiting show. And it was about flying down there. So I decided I was going to get in the Navy and fly. Well, I went down and I enlisted in the Navy to go to Pensacola to fly. I told them I was 18, even though I was only 16. As it turned out, I was pretty well on the way, and when I went to school the next day, the principal, who was a Father Culford at St. X downtown, he called me in the office and we started talking. And he started calling the Navy people all kind of names. Well, I didn't take too much to that. So I started telling him what I thought of him. And of course, in those days, you didn't do that. So I was out on my ear at school. I was thrown out of the school. So that was the first part there. Well, actually, I had a hard time getting back into school again. I actually went to Western Hills.
So that stopped your enlistment.
That stopped my enlistment, and I wasn't enlisted at that particular time.
That stopped the whole process.
Stopped the whole process.
You weren't old enough to actually get in. And
that's right. But I wanted to get in the Navy at that time. Well, as it turned out, then like I say, I was thrown out of school. So my aunt was a public health nurse, and she got me back into school in Western Hills.
Okay.
And
where were you living at the time? What neighborhood here?
I was living in Price Hill.
Okay.
I was living in Price Hill. So I started. I went to school at Western Hills, and I played a little bit of when I was going to X. I played a little bit of football, not much, but when I went to Western Hills, I went out for the football team out there, and they said since it was only 1 year, and I was a Coach McCarthy out there, and Coach McCarthy told me that. Since I was there last year, I could not play on the Western Hills football team.
Oh.
Well, that threw everything off, and I didn't like school again. So I didn't show up for school for quite a few weeks and that. And it turned out, as soon as I was 17, I was thrown out of Western Hills. So that makes 3 schools I was thrown. I was thrown out of Elder, I was thrown out of St. X, I was thrown out of Western Hills.
Elder and St. X both being Catholic parochial schools here in Cincinnati.
And so I was thrown out of Western Hills. Well. Then I decided I took a job downtown. It's at a dock, loading dock, and I worked there until I was about 18, and then actually my name came up on the draft list, and so I was sent over to Fort Thomas. And I actually was drafted into the Army at that.
That's Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think I enlisted in that case. I think I probably was drafted. I don't remember. It's been so long. I don't really remember. But I probably was drafted. That's the reason I went over there. And as soon as I got over there, they said because of your size, we'd like you to stay here as an MP. So they put me over there as an MP. As it turned out, I was running the guardhouse, the detail in that. At that particular time, of course, we had to take basic training up at Atterbury, Camp Atterbury.
Which is what state?
That's in Indiana.
Indiana.
It's near Indianapolis. It was near Indianapolis. I don't know if it's still there or not.
Probably not, but okay.
But anyway, that's where we had to go for basic, and we ran the infiltration course up there and stuff like that. The infiltration course at that particular time was going under machine gun fire, under barbed wire, and things of that nature. You'd have to crawl under that. And I still remember going up there for that. And then what I was doing as an MP over there, like I say, I was running the guardhouse there, detail, with a shotgun. We'd go out and we'd chase prisoners. We'd have maybe give us about 4 prisoners we'd take, and I would take the prisoners around and have them on a work detail.
So these were guys who were...
These were guys who were picked up from time to time.
Yeah, these are Army guys. We're still in the States.
Most of them were from the airborne outfit down there that was in Fort Knox at that time. So they were all a pretty wild bunch, and we used to run details on them with a shotgun. And I also, because I had a pretty loud voice, I used to take them out on the drill field, and I used to have to march them up and down the drill field over at Fort Thomas for a while. I used to stand on the hill, and I could take and command the whole battalion from there, and just have them march all around the place there.
And you were a whopping 18 years old at this point.
I was actually 19, I think, at that time. I think I was 19. I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure now.
By 18, 19, you were still a very young man.
Yeah, I was still 18. I was a bit drafted when I was 18. But I think it was a few months before they caught up with me, and before I had to go in. My number was up. I had to go over there, so I'm not sure exactly when I went over there. Like I say, I don't even have the dates. It's probably on my discharge, but I don't.
You say the dates. You don't know when you went to Europe.
No,
or when you enlisted. Okay,
I know roughly when I went to Europe, and that was right near the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay, so you went to basic training.
I went to basic training up at Atterbury, but and then I took the MP training here.
Okay.
Actually, I used to take and do guard duty down over at Fort Thomas, and I had a dog. I had a dog that walked with me at night. We'd walk all around the camp there, and then from time to time they would send me to different places like West Virginia and New York. We had 45s. We carried a 45 and that. We'd go up and pick up prisoners that were, that had run out, and they'd be put in jail someplace, maybe up east or someplace with that name. Most of the time it was up east, and we'd have to go up there. So we'd take a train ride, and it'd be a couple of us go up and pick up maybe a couple of prisoners and that, and come back. So we used to have to do that.
Okay, so then when did you have to go to Europe? What
happened is because I hated what I was doing over there on the guard duty. The way they treated some of those guys over there, and they used to use hoses on them sometimes, when they got rough, when things got rough. And the jail, the guardhouse, they had a sunken place down there, and where the cells were, and they were all in a cell down there. And when they would act up, this one guy would take and push a hose down there, and I never did particularly care too much for that. I didn't care the way they were being treated in that. But anyway, so I decided that I wanted to get out of there, so I enlisted in the infantry. They said we could, if we wanted to. They were looking for guys at that particular
Always,
time.
right?
They were looking for guys at that time, so I decided to enlist in the infantry. So then they sent me up to Camp Butner in North Carolina.
North Carolina, okay.
And right outside of Raleigh. And I went with a division that was actually an experimental division at the time. They had been on maneuvers down in Louisiana, and then they were sent up to Camp Butner, North Carolina, and we had our maneuvers up there. And of course, you might say I took basic training all over again.
Right.
And that was a pretty rough place up there. We used to have forced marches and things of that nature. And of course, we had I made expert riflemen and stuff like that. We used to have before you get the combat infantry badge and that, you have to have the expert infantry badge.
Okay.
And so I got that, and most of us in the division had that. That was an obstacle course you had to run, and you had to get through it. And so many, like you had to carry a guy your weight, which means I had to carry a guy my weight with over 200 pounds. I think it was had to do, 100 yards in 19 seconds.
Goodness.
I think. And then we had to do so many push-ups. We had to crawl under some barbed wire. We had to do all different kind of things. That was to get the expert infantry badge. And so then the outfit was called out. Well, our commanding officer was a guy by the name of Robert Lowe. I gave you that letter.
Right.
There. Yeah.
Copy of it here.
Yeah. He was I think he was a guard. I think he played for Michigan State. He was an All-American guard
Okay.
for Michigan State. Big guy, about 6'6", something like that. And he was, I guess he weighed about close to maybe 280, 270, 280, something like that. And he was a very proud man. And when he used to march in front of us, we were all proud of him too. But he was he kind of took over. He was our captain then. And
This is still during training.
this is still during training. Yeah. But he was part of the outfit there. Of course, we had several guys that were in charge of the platoon, lieutenants, and when we got overseas and that, we lost a few of those guys. But we had some pretty rough basic training over there up at Camp Butler. Many times we would be called out into the yard at night to dig a 6x6 because somebody pulled something in the sleeping quarters and that, maybe threw a boot at somebody.
And everybody got to enjoy the...
Everybody was able to go out and dig a 6x6,
right,
fill it in again, and then dig another one. And that's how we spent our nights, many nights doing that. And
how long, do you remember how long that training lasted? How many weeks?
Not really, because we went on maneuvers on several occasions. And I still remember we used to go on 30-mile hikes, forced marches we call them.
Right.
In other words, that's the case where you go as fast as you can. You would maybe run downhill, and maybe if they'd walk you uphill, then you'd run downhill again. But you would do the 30 miles as fast as you could in one day. You do the 30 miles in one day.
With full gear.
With
right?
full gear.
Your pack, your weapon.
That's right, with everything on. And many times we would end up with maybe our battalion or with our platoon, maybe with 5 guys left. And so there weren't too many guys that always made that thing. We'll always be able to make that. I was in pretty good shape at that time, though. I usually made them. And a lot of times I ended up carrying somebody else's rifle with me, too. Of course, I was also part of the BAR team.
Right. BAR, the big...
Browning automatic, yeah.
Machine gun.
Right, and of course, with that, you're carrying bandoliers of ammunition across your shoulders and that. So you're carrying a pretty heavy weight.
Plus somebody's got the machine gun
right.
And the tripod.
Well, the machine, the Browning automatic is not that. You can carry it over your shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah. We normally have just the M1. See, actually, to go back a little bit there. When I was in Fort Thomas, we trained with the old Enfield rifles.
Okay.
Now the Enfield rifles were one of World War I
right
vintage, and so that's what we trained with. We also had some Springfields there.
Oh my goodness.
So we had some Springfields there. So we had the Springfields and the Enfields and that.
So that's when the M1 was a new weapon.
The M1 was brand new for us,
Right.
Of course, we had to learn to tear them down. Same way with BAR, we had to learn to tear them down and put them back together again, blindfolded,
Right.
And so we did that. But the training there was pretty good. And then, of course, we went on maneuvers on several occasions. The whole division was on maneuvers. And it was live fire. It was live fire. And a lot of times, of course, we used tracers to see where we're shooting,
Right.
And so that was pretty good, pretty heavy training at that particular time. Well, I think it was the end of 44. I think it was 40. Yeah, because I've been in the Army about a year, so by that time,
right,
maybe over that. But I think it was toward the end of 44, maybe August or something like that. We were sent up to Boston, to a place in Boston. I don't remember exactly what camp it was. All I remember is we were sent up there, and we were told we were going to be being shipped overseas.
Right.
So we ended up there, and then one day they took and loaded us on on a boat, and it was I think it was a Liberty. It was a Liberty ship, if I'm not mistaken. They made liberties and they made
Victories.
victories and liberties.
Victories tend to be Pacific, and,
Yeah.
and liberties tended to be Atlantic. Not 100%.
Yeah, well, I think it was pretty liberty because this was in Boston Harbor.
Right.
So we were loaded on that boat, and we were sent overseas. Well, like I said, I don't know exactly when it was, but it was before. It was still back in '44, earlier in '44, because it took us 30 days. It took us a month to get from there to Le Havre.
Okay.
And on the way to
But this was far enough in that we were the beachhead from D-Day had lost.
oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah, we
were
weren't near D.
We were well on the coast.
We were well in there.
Right.
However, they still had an air force, and on the way over, we were attacked on several occasions.
I assume you went in convoy if you were in a Liberty ship.
We were in it. Actually, the convoy was so big. We couldn't see the end of it.
Right.
There must have been 200 ships. I don't know. And of course, the little destroyers they had out in front of us, and I always was amazed at the destroyers, how they would wave from side to side. I couldn't see how they could stand on those ships.
Right.
Because those things would slap the water.
Right.
And anyway, we lost several ships on the way over, and as I heard stories later on that one of them actually the guys ended up in someplace in one of the islands up there up north.
But when you say lost, you mean they got away from the convoy, not the...
No, they actually got hit.
Oh, okay.
They got hit by something. Every night as we got closer to England, we weren't going to England, but if we got closer to England, we were near there. I think we were zigzagging around. We'd go up north and come back down.
Right.
Because it took a month, and you could hear the depth charges,
Mhm.
and of course in those liberties and that, when a depth charge went off, everything would ring
Right.
because those
Right.
boats, they're metal,
Mhm.
and so everything would ring in those boats and that. I still remember that, and we'd be watching a movie down.
You guys
down
had bunks in the hatches, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's row upon row of bunks and.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the row of bunks and that we had there was much more comfortable than the ones we had coming back. But we used to have movies and everything else on the way over. Didn't have that on the way back. But anyway, on the way over, there were several times when they had we knew that somebody was getting hit,
Right.
or they were shooting at somebody. And then there were a couple times when we got closer to England and to France, when we were up on deck and they had to go down. They sent us downstairs because they were being strafed by German fighters.
Really?
So yeah, it was getting close. We were getting pretty close at that time, though. And but finally we arrived at Le Havre. Well, when we arrived at Le Havre, I still remember they put us on a I think it was an LCI. That's landing craft, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. They put us on LCIs, and that's how we got from the boat to shore to Le Havre. I don't remember a whole lot about it, except I remember walking up a very steep hill with full field gear and a big duffel bag.
Right.
Walking up the hill, we went up to a place called, I think it was, I'm not sure, I know we were in Lucky Strike when we were coming back. I'm not sure it was Lucky Strike going when we first landed there. But I think it was in the same area.
Okay.
And it was a Lucky Strike. And then we were bivouacked in tents and there. And I still remember one of the things that happened was one of our dumb lieutenants decided to drain water uphill from a latrine.
Interesting concept.
And it didn't work. But it was snowing at the time. It was snowing pretty heavy, and we had some rough. We lost quite a few guys there they had to be sent back because they had trench foot because it was so cold. I remember I think it was the first day we got there. We had they had showers set up, and it was cold, so cold and that. But they had them inside the tents. They had the tents heated. And so we were able to take showers when we first got over. See, we didn't have any showers on a boat or anything.
Right.
So we were able to take showers there. And then they put us in these tents. And these tents, there was one stove in each tent.
Okay.
And we would actually, every day, we would have to take our boots off, and sometimes we had 2 or 3 pairs of socks on, take our boots and our socks off and rub each other's feet. So
Now, how many, you see, you had heater for every tent, how many,
Every 10,
how many men were in a tent?
you probably had a squad in there, maybe 12 men.
Okay,
12 men.
pretty substantial tent.
Yeah, pretty good sized tent. Yeah.
That's the size of this room or something.
Yeah, pretty close, yeah. Yeah, and we had I can't remember what we had. We had regular cots, I think, in there, you know.
Right.
And but we used to take and rub each other's feet there because of the fact, and like I say, we lost a lot of guys because they got trench foot, you know. And I don't know how many.
Something you think more of as a World War I issue than a World War II issue.
Well,
but
in a sense, but it was cold. It was we got down to 0 at that particular time. Mm-hmm. It was cold. This was around the time of the bulge.
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
And they were having the same, you know, they're having that problem over there too. They lost a lot of guys there, you know. And then all of a sudden, I really don't know the time that we were sent, but we were loaded on trucks, and then we were sent to the front.
So this is probably in the midst of the bulge.
Yeah.
So
right.
Christmas,
Yeah, it's
Christmas 1944, the immediate time around Christmas.
Well, it's Christmas 1944. It's right close to that, and they were sending us up there sending us to the bulge. And I still remember one of the things that was very disconcerting was the fact that they were the trucks running along the road there. When we got I guess somewhere near Luxembourg, somewhere in that vicinity, maybe I don't know exactly where. Like I told my son in the letter I wrote to him, you know, I don't remember where we were, what the dates were, or how, you know, or how we got there. But we were on trucks most of the time, and on those trucks, I still remember going for about along a road. Of course, in France, the roads are fairly narrow, and we were going along this road, and we were not at the point at that time. We were not at the point of the attack, but we were along there, and I still remember we were going along, and along the side of the road were bodies of our soldiers and German soldiers, both laying together there on the side, and there were tanks. And I still remember that one of the pictures I have of that first part, which was kind of scary, was an American soldier in a tank, still on fire, coming out of the top of the tank, and he had fallen over, and he was still on fire.
This is before you had even seen combat.
We hadn't been in combat yet. No, we heard the guns. We heard the guns, but we weren't there yet. See, we weren't at the head of we weren't on the point at that particular time. What they were doing there was there would be one outfit would be taking over, going through the road,
right,
clearing the way, and then everybody would follow, and that's where we were kind of following.
But obviously, it was obvious from the casualties that there had been people there not that long ago.
The casualties were tremendous. They talk about what happened in Iraq and that. You can't just that one line of roads. I bet it was a mile where there was nothing but vehicles, wrecked vehicles, and dead bodies laying along.
German and American bodies, German and American
together,
equipment.
German and American together, and we were not allowed to stop. You know, it was not. Again, one of the things they pushed into us, and that you don't stop for somebody injured or anything when you're in the infantry. You know, let the medics take care of it. You know,
right.
And so we weren't allowed to stop. And you wanted to stop and help because you could see some of the guys were moving. You know,
right.
Like I say, this one guy was still on fire. You know, and so it was kind of a sad, and especially to see at that particular time for us to see Americans. By the way, you know, we didn't mind seeing the jet Germans, but the Americans.
Right.
And laying alongside the road there. So that was our first introduction to the war, and it was kind of a scary thing to be into. But anyway, we kept on going, and we were, like I say, we went with trucks and that, and we went through some of these towns in I guess it was France and Luxembourg and around in there. I know we did stop at Luxembourg, and we stopped at Luxembourg. They made a place there. We did have some small firefights on the side. Like we stopped in this one town, and I remember there was a small creek, and the Germans started firing at us from across the creek. Well, we had to get off the trucks and we started laying down some fire ourselves on,
Right.
And then I remember the next day.
You still on the BAR at that point?
No, I didn't have the BAR. I didn't have the BAR at that particular time. I was on the BAR team, but I had my M1. I was using my M1, and we were shooting at the Germans across the creek. And I still remember how accurate they were, because they had these burp guns, called them the burp guns. These burp guns were shooting at us, and man, this one sergeant in our outfit, he stuck his head up and the bullet went right through his helmet. Didn't touch him, went right through his helmet.
My goodness.
So went in one side, went out the other. Good grief.
Of course, the Germans at that point were battle hardened.
They were battle hardened.
They
were 300 yards away,
Right.
And we were shooting at them. We didn't know whether we were hitting them. We saw them running sometimes. We shot at them.
Right.
Whether we hit them or not, we didn't know. However, the next day, we had our tanks. The tanks came up and helped us out, and they started firing across there and kind of cleared the way. Well, when they cleared things out, we knew things were safe. Then we took off across there, and there again, we saw there were dead bodies, dead Germans and things like that. Whether we hit them or whoever hit them, we don't know, but they were laying there. And again, that wasn't too bad. It wasn't too great, but we actually were. I think that time they put us in a foxhole up on top of a hill. I remember one night we were sitting up in that foxhole, it was raining pretty hard, and the foxhole filled up with water. And
it was cold.
It was cold. Mm-hmm. It was cold. Yeah. And well, anyway, then the next thing I remember is we were in Luxembourg, I think, and we were bivouacked in a home, people's home.
Right.
They took over somebody's home, and we were bivouacked there, and we actually, one of our members of our squad, a tall red-headed Texan kid, and they were, of course, all of us were, we were 18, 19 years old.
Right.
We had an old guy in there who was 25,
Yeah.
But anyhow, and he was one of our sergeants in that. We also had a couple of guys who knew what the heck they were doing, Most of us didn't, but they did. They seemed to know what they were doing. But this kid from Texas and that, he had been on our outfit from the very beginning, and he was a big, tall, red-headed kid. And I still remember him. They lost him, and we thought, well, the Germans got him.
Right.
Because we were bivouacked near woods, and we figured, well, he got lost. But it turned out he did go into the woods. But when he went into the woods, the Germans surrendered to him, and he come out with about 50 Germans out of the woods. So in other words,
Sergeant York, huh?
Yeah. Well, he didn't really. He didn't use a gun or anything. They just wanted to get out of there. At that particular time, some of the Germans were surrendering.
Right.
They were trying to get out of there. But I still remember that was in Luxembourg now. Then we went on into Germany, and this was it was still about the time of the Bulge, and Patton was making a run up there.
Right.
Well, we were attached to Patton's outfit at that particular time.
Right.
We were attached to Patton's outfit, and so we ended up in a woods one night, and in this woods, we actually were told by Patton that we were to get our dress clothes on.
Okay.
In other words, they brought our duffel bags up to get our dress uniforms on, because he wanted us to look good taking the town. So he wanted us to make sure we were dressed up.
There you go.
So, but that was Patton. That's the only thing I know about Patton. I never saw him personally, but all I know is that that's the way. And I thought it was a dumb thing, because you were out in the woods, and we were things were going. You were going to the bathroom and everything.
I was going to say you were smelly and dirty and tired, and
we were.
You're worried about getting your better uniforms.
Clean uniforms on. Yeah, he's worried about putting.
Didn't seem like a priority to you at the time.
Yeah, and I still remember that. I also remember another thing that hit me and it hit my memory was I still remember the planes going over. See, at that particular time, our Air Force was kind of pretty well covered everything.
Right.
The German Air Force wasn't there. But I still remember looking up and seeing some of our planes up there and wishing I was on one of those planes and head back, be back in England that night,
Right.
get a good meal. Again, at that particular time, we weren't getting too much as far as meals. Most of the time, what happened is the good meals all went to the rear echelon.
Right.
We used to get, I think it was the dinners, I'm not sure what the dinners, but the dinners weren't quite as good.
So were you eating C rations, K rations?
C rations, K rations, yeah, stuff like that. We did one time while we were going through there, I think we were on the Moselle River at the time, close to the Moselle, and we went into a town, and the town was empty. And we walked into this one home, and there was still food left on the table.
So you liberated it.
So we liberated it.
So somebody had to.
We had a good meal that night. But I still remember that night too. They sent us out on guard duty. You know, while we had to go out every night and patrol the street there, and so we weren't always in there eating all the time. So, but they sent us out quite often.
Now, I have in your biographical thing here, you received two great distinctions. You received a Purple Heart, which was certainly something to be proud of, and a Bronze Star, which of course is something to be very much proud of. Being
not really, because the Bronze Star was given to me recently because of they have something that I think. In 1947 or something, I think it came out that if you had the combat infantryman's badge, combat infantry should have a Bronze Star. So there was something in that, something written up in there. So
that was given as more of a general thing than as for a specific action.
I felt a little out of it because of the fact I didn't feel I earned that, because some of the guys in my outfit I think did. They actually made it. They earned the Bronze Star.
Well, then tell me, if you don't mind, since you certainly mentioned it here, tell me about receiving your Purple, about what caused you to receive a Purple
That's when
Heart.
I think some of them should have got it. Well, what happened is we ended up on the banks of the Rhine River, and one morning they sent us down to the river, our platoon.
Now, had the Army crossed the Rhine yet?
No, they hadn't crossed yet.
Okay, so
we were the spearhead there at that particular point. We had come down, went down to the river at that time, and just our platoon.
Right.
And we were put into ducks. Now, ducks were the amphibians, you know.
Okay.
And
wheeled vehicles that could float.
Right.
Okay.
And we were loaded into there with full gear. Not our duffel bags, but our full
Your pack,
packs,
your weapons.
Weapons and everything. And I still remember there was about 3 inches from the water going across that river. And they fired at us a little bit once in a while. The Germans would fire. We didn't get too much fire. It was early in the morning.
Right.
And so there was about 3 or 4 ducks there that we rode in. I don't remember how we did that, because like I say, we had the platoon, which means 4 squads.
Right.
And so we crossed the river, and we went over, and when we got onto the other side, we saw there was a tank and a Jeep there.
Okay.
And we didn't know how it got there.
An American tank.
An American tank.
And an American Jeep.
And it was a 4th Armored, which is Patton's outfit.
Okay.
They were from evidently 4th Armored. And one of the guys that had the tank, he said he wanted us to. They were instructed to go down and clear out the towns along the riverbank. Okay. That was supposed to be the job, and he wanted volunteers. Well, our sergeant volunteered. We didn't. He did.
You didn't have a vote in the particular matter.
We didn't have a vote.
No.
We didn't have a vote, but he volunteered. So some of us climbed on the tank, and a few went into the Jeep.
Do you remember what kind of tank it was, by any chance?
Not really. I don't remember the tank. All I remember is there was room enough on the back end. Actually, by that time, our squad was down to about 9 men, I guess. So we had, I guess we had maybe 6, and maybe 3 of them rode in the Jeep, okay? All right, well, we went down, then we went down along the river, along the Rhine River, right after we got on the other side and that. And nothing was happening. It was early in the morning, of course, and nothing was going on. And then we finally got down, and we spotted along the river, along the Rhine River on that side where we were. It was actually where I was wounded. It was in the town of Lorsch, Germany. Along there, there's a railroad track, a raised railroad track that is up there. Okay, and all along the line there are trenches dug in. The Germans had dug in trenches. They weren't there. But they had dug in trenches and that. Well, where the railroad went over past the town, they had like little tunnels going into the town.
Okay.
From it's under in that raised part.
Okay. Where the tracks were.
Right, where the tracks were, and they were each one they were all boarded up. But then when we got to this one place, we saw people back in there, and so the tank driver decided to stop, and he sent us back to sea, and so this was in the town of Lorsch, Germany, where I got hit. So they decided to see about it. Well, we got off, and we went down there, and we were starting to crawl over the top of that little embankment there, and the one sergeant that we had, he was actually a New York cop, and he said, "Don't do that." He said, "Don't do that." And then all of a sudden, they start throwing grenades over at us from over the top of that thing. Well, there were trenches down there, so we jumped into those trenches down below.
So you're on one side of this rail where the railroad tracks are.
Right.
They're on the other side.
They're on the other side, and
they're throwing grenades at
we don't know who it is. We don't know whether they're Germans or not. But we figured, well, we're gonna nail those guys. We're gonna get them because we're supposed to clear it out. So we got in the trenches and we were all prepared. And then all of a sudden, the big 88s up on top of the hill started opening up. These big, German 88 things and that. And of course, the 88s actually they have a ACAC too. They have an airburst.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Well, they start shooting at the tank.
Right.
Well, the tank driver couldn't take that. He had to get out of there. He had to protect the tank,
Right.
So he took off. But then they kept shooting these airbursts at us, and we had a couple guys got hit. And
so you say airburst, they blow up in the air, and then what would come out?
That's right. And we got
shrapnel or whatever.
Shrapnel or whatever. We had actually, I can still remember there's a tree over the top of us. And that tree, they knocked that tree, that with shrapnel would hit that tree and it would knock down. Well, and the airbursts would come down into the trenches.
Right.
So the trenches were no protection.
Right.
And they were still throwing grenades over there. See, and so the grenades were coming at us, and the whole bit was hitting too much. So we were ordered. Sergeant, he said, "We got to get out of here." So the Jeep was still there. So we said, "Everybody for themselves."
What was still there?
The Jeep was still
there.
Okay. The Jeep was still there. That was in closer. See, the tank was there. The tank had drawn a fire, to some degree. But the Jeep was
so they
still
kind
there.
of pulled away to protect the tank from being hit. And
that's right.
Destroying what firepower you had.
They were aiming at the tank.
Of course. Right.
And so anyway, and then of course they started aiming at us after the tank left.
Right.
And we knew that shrapnel was coming down there. So can't make it here. So what we did is we hopped onto the Jeep, and we started to take off. And I still don't know what happened. I still don't know whether an 88 hit that or whether a grenade hit it, but the Jeep blew up.
Okay.
As we were going down, and I still remember that the Jeep driver was in pretty bad shape, and I got hit there too, and I don't know what hit because I fell out of the Jeep.
Okay.
I fell out of the Jeep, and we were getting hit. And I had shrapnel in me, and we don't know where it came from. But anyway, the Jeep driver was laying up there, and they told us the sergeant had jumped into the river. There was a fence along the river, and they had jumped over the fence and down into the river, to the Rhine River.
Okay.
And so they called me over there. Well, I crawled over there, And was able to they pulled me over the fence and got down. I got down in the river. And then the Jeep driver was still there.
Right.
And I think a couple of guys went up and got him down.
Okay.
And they pulled him down into the river. And he was bleeding pretty bad. Of course, I was bleeding pretty bad too. So then we decided, well, we got the side of there was like a wall, a brick wall along the river.
Okay.
And so besides the fence on top of that. Well, we started crawling back up river, back up north there. And we finally came to a house. And so we decided, well, we're going to go in that house. And well, we moved around, we went in that house. It turned out to be a convent, a nun's convent.
Okay.
And I still remember these nuns were very nice to us. They were very good to us. They stopped the bleeding. They took care of the driver first, because he was the worst one. He was in the worst shape. And then they took care of me. And at that particular time, I went out of it. I lost too much blood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out of it at that time. And I don't remember what happens. All I remember is the next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance, and I was on the other side of the river, heading back. But I had passed out, like, evidently, loss of blood. So that's all I remember. But I do remember the fact that when I got back to, was in a hospital for about 3 months in Paris, and then outside of Paris. And then from there, I went back to my outfit. And when I got back to my outfit, I found out that a couple of the guys had been shot, had been wounded there. That this one kid had stayed there and stayed with him. And that's the guy that got the Silver Star.
A Silver Star.
Yeah. But,
So they didn't get back over the fence. They were still under.
They had hid. They stayed in one of the trenches. Of course, they were in a different area there, evidently, because where we were down below, and I think they were in a trench up further up near where the train was over. And then so they were up there, and maybe they weren't getting hit as bad as we were, but he still remained there, and he stayed there until I think they said that I think our outfit got there at I think it was probably late that night.
Right.
Like that. Of course, that was early morning when this happened. All this stuff happened. See, and so our outfit. But then they told us what had happened is we were actually sent over there as to draw fire.
Right.
In other words, and when they found that they had big guns on the top of the hill, they took them out, and so then the rest of the division came over. See.
Right.
So we were sent as you might say, as a recon outfit. We didn't know that at the time, but that's what happened. So, but these kids they had taken care of that. This one kid had taken care of 2 guys, who were shot up. So he stayed there with them.
Do you know what happened finally with the resolution of that activity? Did they ultimately get out, or
What? Well,
the troops who?
he got out. Yeah.
Okay.
He got out. Yeah. Well, the whole outfit came across.
Okay.
See, and evidently that's how they evidently I was probably still in a convent when our outfit came across, and then they put me in an ambulance and sent me back across the river.
Okay.
And then from there we went to one of these evac hospitals.
Right.
I remember it was a regular house, and there was about 3 or 4 of us in there. That 3 or 4 of them. And they had a couple of doctors there.
Right.
And then they put us on a C-47 and flew us back to Paris.
Okay.
So that's
To a major medical.
Yeah. We were in Paris. We're in a hospital outside of Paris, and I still remember that one. That was pretty good too. Of course, that's the day they threw the Purple Hearts on the bed. They didn't present them to you.
The number they were handing out, they probably
they were numbered. Yeah, they were thrown on the bed. That's where you got. I got another one that was presented to me later on, but that was. I still remember walking into the room, and there where I was in the hospital, and Purple Heart was laying on the bed. So, but that's how they did it in those days. But and then also, when I started feeling a little bit better, they let us go into Paris, and that was a pretty good deal. We got to go into Paris for about while I was recovering for a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
Now I'm looking at your citation. I've got your Purple Heart citations. That's the 27th of March.
Right.
So when did you return to your unit, or when were you reassigned to another unit, whatever?
Well, I wasn't reassigned. I went back to the same unit, which was there weren't quite the guys weren't all there, weren't there before. On the way, of course, as we were going over there, I didn't go through that and that. Some of the times, we lost our platoon leader. Some of the officers, they would wear their
insignia,
lieutenant's bars,
uh-huh.
and they picked them off.
Pick them off in a heartbeat.
Germans picked them off right away.
Right.
We lost a couple of guys that way. So, so we didn't have too many platoon leaders that stuck with us.
Okay.
But some of the guys were still there. A couple of the guys.
So you went back to your same unit.
Went back to the same
It's
unit.
the war. Okay, but March. We're really late in the war. It's the end of
Right.
March when you're
Right.
hit. Was there still hostilities going on
Not
by the time you rejoined your unit?
not when I got back to my unit.
Okay.
When I got back to my unit, it was pretty well over at that time. Well, actually, we were. I don't think the war wasn't declared over, but things were slowed down quite a bit by
Right.
that time. But because we were sent from the hospital, as a matter of fact, we couldn't find my unit. I was sent all over Germany, through many different towns in Germany in an old freight car.
Right.
With the rest of the guys. We were looking for our outfits.
Okay.
There were different repo depots that we'd stop off at. And,
Do you guys know where the 55th, 89th is? And
yeah, we'd ask them, and they'd say, well, they moved here and they moved there. I finally found them down in a place outside of Linz, Austria.
Okay.
They were living in an old SS barracks.
Okay.
And the SS barracks, it turned out that the SS men there had a fleet of horses and riding horses.
Oh my goodness.
So they had stables. So we went out, and it was a fun thing there. It was actually a brick,
Right.
Brick and mortar. It was a nice place, really. And even where the horses were stabled was brick, And we used to take and ride those horses up the hill, and we had a ball there. We also got into, we were outside of Linz. We were about 30 miles outside of Linz, and every once in a while we get a chance to go down into Linz, Austria.
Right.
And of course, Linz is right along the river there.
Right.
And from what they tell me, the Germans were still firing. Not the Germans, the Russians. The Russians were firing across the river at us.
Really?
Yeah. See, and we used to have the kids come to us and say, when are you going to fight the Russians? And we thought they were kidding, because we thought the Russians were our friends. Matter of fact, on the trip I took trying to find my outfit, we used to come across trains full of Russians,
Right.
They were going in the other direction, and these Russians and we had a ball with them, we had a lot of fun with them. They would get the Russian dances and everything else for us,
Right.
And sometimes they had beer, and we had a ball. So, but we didn't realize that we were going to fight the Russians, and these German kids, though, they were way ahead of us. They said, "When are you going to fight the Russians?"
Mm-hmm.
And,
Interesting. They had a little more.
They knew more than we
a
did.
little omniscience there, what the future might be like. I guess.
That's right. They knew what was going to happen. In that.
So, you something else you already told me about is you. So you were there. The war's over.
Mm-hmm. Well, then we actually. I still remember we had some of the guys had been gambling and they'd go into town and gamble. And we had so much money. Some of the guys had so much money they couldn't do anything with it. We actually bought a bar down there. Our outfit bought a bar.
Okay.
And it was it was right by the barracks there. I don't know whether it was a regular bar. I can't remember anymore. Whether it actually was a bar before or whether we converted it into a bar. But we bought a bar, and we had a pretty nice place there for a while. And then they come up with this point system where if you had enough points, you could go home.
Okay.
Well, I didn't have enough points. But they said if you don't have enough points, then if you re-enlist, you get $500, and you get a month's leaves at home.
Okay.
And then you can come back here. Come back, you re-enlist to come back to Germany. So that's exactly what I did. I re-enlisted. I think it was 18 months or something. Was it a year or 18 months? I'm not sure. So anyhow, I re-enlisted.
But the point you did that, the war is still going on in the Pacific theater. Or had
The
that
war
been
is still
around?
going on in the Pacific, right?
Okay.
The war is still going on in the Pacific. And as a matter of fact, the war was still going on when I did that. Well, I think the war was still going on in Germany, but it was pretty well over. But they had declared an end to it. I think what happened is that when I was on the way back, there was a couple of us did that, and on the way back, we got a trip to. We went up into the back near Camp Lucky Strike again, where we were in Le Havre.
Near Le Havre, right?
And they said we could get a month's leave. Or not a month's leave. We'd get a 3 days leave over in England if we wanted to.
Okay.
And so we decided to do that. We got on a boat and we went over to England. Maybe it was a week. I'm not sure. We took a week off because the boats weren't ready to take us back home yet.
Right.
So anyway, we got over to England. I still remember there. Before we left there, we couldn't take all the money we had. And some of the guys were gambling there, and they would gamble for $300 or $400 a piece, which was big money in those days.
Yeah, especially when a private made $30 or something like that.
Well, it was I think I finished up at 65 or 70.
Okay, $300 is still a lot of money.
That's right. That's still a lot of quite a bit of money. Anyway, I did go home, and on the way home, again, we ran into a really rough storm. And it was a Victory or Liberty. I'm not sure which it was, but I still remember they sent us below decks. I guess it was for about 10 days, and the boat was rocking so much, and we were in bunks 5 high, and they were swinging back and forth, and they weren't. These things that would go back and forth. I was in the top. The hammock, yeah. Okay. I was in the top one. I still remember putting my canteen up, and the canteen was hitting the ceiling on one side, hitting the ceiling on the other side. And they said the boat was going, doing over 45, degrees. Ooh. And you could hear it every time it come down in the water. It would clang.
Right.
Nobody ate anything for about 2 weeks, and the crew was sick. And as a matter of fact, everything was out, even the bathrooms. The water, we were down in the hold, and the bathroom was up one deck. And to get up to the bathroom, and of course they had like these little stands that when you walk into the hatch,
right.
the water, but the water was over there. If you opened the bathroom door, the water would come out of the bathroom door, and it would go down into the hold. And I still remember laying up in that bunk, and the guys were down below. They were playing. They were shooting dice on the floor, and they had tied themselves together around the pole, and they were shooting dice down there, and all that water come down from the bathroom. the whole thing, the water was it was a mess there. It was something. Yeah, I still remember shooting dice, and then of course we were getting hungry, even though the crew they were all seasick. But I got seasick going over. I didn't get seasick there. We went up and we found some oranges, and that was the only thing we had to eat for about 10, 12 days.
So this is coming back for your leave.
Going back to the States. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a time actually. I still remember seeing a picture in a paper of a carrier that they said that same storm had bent the front over on the carrier.
Oh my Lord.
They had a picture of the carrier with the front bent over, and so but that was really a bad storm. But anyway, I got back there, and I got home, and I had my leave and everything, and I was figuring on going back over to Europe.
Right.
They put us on a boat to go to Europe. All of a sudden, about the second day, I saw land over on the side there, and what the heck are we doing there? We're not going back to Europe. They had actually issued winter uniforms too.
Right.
For Europe. And we're going, all of a sudden, we end up going through the Panama Canal. We're heading over for Japanese occupation duty.
There's been a change of plans.
Yeah, in other words, even though we signed up, and they said, we all said, we signed up for Europe.
I was going back to Cincinnati.
But anyhow, we went through the Panama Canal, went over there, and when we hit Hawaii, there was a proclamation said that any combat veterans over here, if they want to stay in Hawaii instead of going to Japan, they can stay here. And so I decided to stay in Hawaii.
Okay.
And it was a good deal because I was stationed on Waikiki Beach at a place called Fort DeRussy.
Okay.
Fort DeRussy is now a museum. I was there some years ago, and what had happened is the fort was so heavily built, the walls were about 6 foot thick, I think, and they said they tried to blow some of them up, and they found out they shook the island so much that they broke so many
It's
windows.
easier just
They
to.
decided to leave the fort there. So,
Right.
so anyway, it's a museum now. But I was there, and I was running a little motel along in Fort DeRussy for the Air Force coming over.
Right.
I actually was there, and then one day I was out playing baseball, and they found out I could play ball, and they asked me if I liked to play ball for the Army. I said, well, yeah, I guess so. So they sent me up to Schofield Barracks, and the rest of my duty there in Hawaii was playing ball for 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day. If we didn't play ball, we're out taking and scraping and cleaning the field, you know. But that
Baseball, football.
was baseball was it. That was it. I played baseball. Yeah, I was a pitcher.
So you finished up your military service playing baseball in Hawaii.
That's right.
So much for the rough duty.
Yeah, and I got I think I saw in my papers I did get an occupation medal from Japan. I know Japanese for Japanese.
Because they didn't have one that said Waikiki, right?
No, they didn't have one. Waikiki, but it was a different place then. There was only one. I always thought one hotel, but there's another hotel right behind it. There was only 2 hotels on that whole beach all that time. Now it's nothing but hotels, you know. But
It's the pink, the famous one that's painted pink, right?
we used to go out. I used to go out and swim every day when I was at that little there. Not when I was playing baseball, but when I was stationed there running that little motel. I also had a little bar down on the beach that I had a squad of men that helped me run it
Right.
and run the hotel.
So you had you had an international. You had a bar in Germany, and you had a hotel, and so you could have been the next Hilton.
I ran it.
Uh,
Yeah. Of course, it was.
So when did you get back to Cincinnati? When we bring this whole thing to a close, when did you?
47.
Okay.
47, I came back to Cincinnati, yeah.
Anything interesting happen on this time on the actual trip back to Cincinnati? So the one they told you they were going to give you?
Well, actually, they put us on a boat and they sent us back to Seattle, through Seattle.
Right.
And nothing. Then they went the rest of the way on a train, and I think I was discharged in Atterbury. I think I was discharged in Atterbury.
Okay.
So I went from Atterbury to Atterbury. So yeah, nothing happened too much here. So, but that's basically it.
Well, that's terrific. Any other things you want to share with us? You've shared some wonderful stories here. I certainly.
I really can't think of anything special that happened. Happened in the Army there. Several things I can remember as I was as an MP. Of course, Newport and downtown Cincinnati were off limits,
Right.
and used to patrol that. And used to have the little green cars running from Fort Thomas into there, and used to ride on those things. There were 2 of us.
The old train line.
The old green line used to ride there, and they used to have a little terminal downtown. But we used to pull guard duty downtown once in a while. They would send us the MPs down there, and we would have to chase guys out of Newport and out of downtown Cincinnati.
And that was Newport was a more interesting.
In those days it was
Fairly interesting place.
Yeah.
Remarkably interesting to young men away from home. Some of them for the first time.
In those days it was, and of course chasing prisoners too. That was kind of a thing. Like I said, I didn't particularly care for that with those guys and that, but. I still remember some of the stories where the guys would they'd get shot. See, if any of the guys shot anybody, they would be transferred to another outfit, And we had a couple escaped prisoners down on the riverbank down on from Fort Thomas and that. They got shot, and a couple of our guys that were in the outfit, the MP outfit, and they were transferred then. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, they were 10. Yeah, they always used to kid us, if you shoot anybody, you have to pay for the bullet, and then you're going to be transferred. So I don't know just how that worked, but anyhow, was interesting with those kids. Some of those kids, you know, they were young, all young kids
Right.
at that time, you know. And we have like
You were and they were, right?
Yeah, right.
Everybody involved was.
We all were,
in the
yeah,
military.
yeah. And we had, of course, we had the shotguns and that, you know. But we had a couple of guys that had their shotguns taken away from them, you know. So we had to kind of watch ourselves there. But I just did not like the guard duty bit.
Well, you must not have, since basically, obviously, going into infantry was bound to lead to going into combat ultimately.
Well,
or at least the possibility. Of it.
Yeah. Well, that didn't bother me too much. I was always you know, interested in that part there, and you don't realize until you get into it just what it's all about.
Right.
Of course, when I got back home after the war, and that there were, in those days they didn't call it, what do they call it now? PTSD or something. Anyhow, they call it. They used to call it the combat fatigue.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And we got a guy in our
post-traumatic shock.
Yeah, that's what it is. We got a guy in our Purple Heart guy. He's got that problem right now from the Vietnam War.
Right.
And but when I told him when I first got back that you know, he was saying he gets like 2 hours sleep a night. I used to go for walks at night, you know, because I remember some of the stuff, and like I say, some of the what happened to some of the guys and that. But a lot of times you want to forget some of that stuff.
Yes, I'm sure.
But,
Well, Joe, thank you so much for sharing your memories with us as part of the Veterans History Program. Again, this has been Donald Cruz at the Delhi Township Branch, the Public Library in Cincinnati, Hamilton County. I've been interviewing Mr. Joe Schultheis, who's been kind enough to share his reminiscences of his experiences mostly in the European theater in the Second World War.
well, thank you, Don.